She called me a fat pig in a ballroom I technically owned. My son just stood there, frozen. They thought I was a joke. They were about to learn that this contractor always tears down before he rebuilds. If you've ever been underestimated, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This whole nightmare started 6 months ago, but the final act began tonight, under the glare of 1,000 crystal lights. The Vanderbilt mansion was obscene. Marble pillars, chandeliers the size of small cars, and the suffocating smell of old money and expensive scotch. I stood near the back of the grand ballroom. The fabric of my rented tuxedo scratched against my skin. It was cheap, deliberately cheap. I hated the suit. I hated the place. But I was here for Ethan, my son. It was his engagement party. Ethan stood across the room. He looked handsome in his new suit, but uncomfortable. He kept tugging at his collar, a nervous habit he'd had since he was a kid. He was laughing, but the sound was brittle, forced. Beside him, shimmering like a shard of ice, was Chloe Vanderbilt. Chloe was beautiful, but it was a sharp, predatory kind of beauty, the kind that cuts you if you get too close. Her family owned half the city's skyline. They weren't just rich, they used their money like a weapon. And tonight I was their target practice. I had planned this. I drove my old Ford truck instead of the Bentley. I needed to see who she really was. I needed to see how she treated Thomas Hayes, the small-time contractor with dirt under his nails. Ever since Ethan met Chloe, something felt wrong, a cold knot in my stomach. I needed to know if she loved my son, or if she just saw him as a project, something to mold into one of them. I had to protect him, even if it meant letting them think I was nothing. Ethan caught my eye. He gave a small, nervous wave. I nodded back. The smile felt tight on my face. He looked so hopeful, so desperate for this night to go well. He wanted his world and my world to connect. I knew they never would, not without breaking something first. Chloe tapped his arm. Her nails were long and sharp, painted blood red. She guided him toward the center of the room, the epicenter of power. That's where her parents were holding court. I took a deep breath. Showtime. Richard Vanderbilt, Chloe's father. Richard Vanderbilt, Chloe's father. A large man, tall, imposing, with a face flushed red from expensive wine. Margaret, her mother, was thin and severe. Her smile was stretched tight as a wire. Her eyes darted around the room, constantly assessing the value of everyone present. They were surrounded by their circle, people who had never known a day of hard labor. They looked at me like I was a stain on their expensive carpet. Chloe waited for a lull in the conversation. She had a performer's timing. Everyone, she announced. Her voice was clear and high. Announce everyone, she announced. Her voice was clear and high. It rang with an entitlement that grated on my nerves. I want you to finally meet Ethan's father, Thomas Hayes. Ethan led me forward. I kept my eyes slightly down. I tried to look humble, intimidated. I played the part of a man who didn't belong. It wasn't hard. The arrogance in the room was suffocating. Richard, Margaret, I said softly. I extended my hand. Richard stared at my hand, calloused from years of work. He looked at it like it was contaminated. The silence stretched. A waiter carrying champagne paused, sensing the tension. The room went too quiet. He finally shook it. His grip was limp, dismissive, like he was touching something unpleasant. So, you're the father, he said. His voice boomed, laced with contempt. He wiped his hand on his trousers immediately after. I felt the slight, the deliberate insult. I said nothing. My hand felt dirty now, but not from my work, from his touch. Margaret didn't even bother shaking my hand. She gave a curt nod. Her eyes were already scanning the room, looking for someone more important. The senator had just arrived, and I was clearly blocking her view. The rejection was silent, but it screamed louder than any insult. Ethan tells me you work in construction? Richard asked. He looked me up and down. The cheap suit, the scuffed shoes. Small jobs, mostly, I mumbled, looking at the marble floor. Renovations, kitchen remodels. How quaint, Margaret murmured, her voice like frosted glass. They thought they were superior. They had no idea how close they were to the edge. But that wasn't the worst part. Then came the moment that changed everything. Chloe turned to her circle of friends, a group of equally cold, equally entitled people. She put a hand over her mouth, a gesture meant to draw attention, not hide her words. She waited for a lull. Her eyes sparkled with cruel amusement. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the punchline. Her stage whisper was loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's the project manager," she giggled. The sound was sharp, mocking. Then her voice dropped, dripping with venom. "Honestly, look at him. This is the fat pig we have to put up with." The group erupted in laughter. Loud, barking, howling laughter. They looked at me, the fat pig who didn't belong. My blood ran cold. My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't going to let them see me break. Not here. Not now. I looked at Ethan. My son. His face was white. Shock. Humiliation. Betrayal. He stared at Chloe. He saw the monster beneath the beauty, but he said nothing. He just stood there, paralyzed. That hurt more than the insult. His silence was a betrayal of its own. I felt a sudden crushing weight in my chest. Maybe I had failed him. Maybe he was just too scared. I didn't react outwardly. I just stood still. I let their laughter wash over me. I absorbed the impact of their cruelty. I memorized every face that was laughing. The senator, the hedge fund managers, the socialites. I would remember them all. Richard Vanderbilt was laughing the loudest. A deep, booming sound that filled the room. He was enjoying the joke, enjoying my humiliation. Then he made eye contact with me. I held his gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I let the mask of Thomas Hayes slip, just for a second. Just enough for him to see the man behind the cheap tuxedo, the man who held his future in his hands. His laughter stopped abruptly. His eyes widened. His face, red with amusement, turned pale. Ashen. He wasn't looking at my suit anymore. He was looking at my face. Really looking. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. The silence in the room was sudden. Absolute. The string quartet faltered. A violin screeched off-key. Richard took a step back. He bumped into a waiter. Champagne glasses wobbled. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Not just any ghost. A ghost that held the keys to his destruction. The predator had suddenly realized it was prey. "Richard, what is it?" Margaret hissed, grabbing his arm. "You look ill. Stop making a scene." Richard didn't answer. He couldn't speak. He just stared at me. I saw the gears turning in his head. Disbelief. Recognition. Terror. He knew who I was. He recognized the face from a grainy photograph leaked years ago. The face of T.J. Sterling. "Do I know you?" Richard whispered. His voice trembled. I tilted my head. A gesture I knew he would recognize from boardroom battles, fought through proxies. "I don't believe we've met formally, Mr. Vanderbilt." The tension was thick, palpable. A moment ago I was a joke. Now I was a threat. And I was enjoying every second of it. Richard tried desperately to recover. He forced a loud, unnatural laugh. It sounded strained, hollow. "Ah, for a moment there, you reminded me of someone," he said, his voice too loud. "A competitor from long ago? My apologies, Thomas. Please enjoy the party." He was lying. Badly, he was a man trying to outrun an avalanche. He grabbed Chloe by the arm. His grip was tight enough to make her wince. "A word, darling." "Immediately," he muttered. He pulled her away. Chloe looked confused. Annoyed. She didn't see the terror in her father's eyes. She only saw the inconvenience. She still thought I was the pig. She didn't realize I was the butcher. Ethan rushed over to me. As soon as they were gone, his face was still pale. "Dad, what was that? Why did he look at you like that?" He looked terrified. "It's nothing, Ethan," I said, resuming the facade. Rich people spook easily. But Chloe, what she said, his voice cracked. He looked devastated. How could she say that about you? In front of everyone? And I just stood there. "I'm so sorry, Dad." The apology helped. A little. I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to grab him and pull him out of this nest of vipers. But not yet. If I revealed everything now, Chloe might spin it. She might convince Ethan I was the villain for lying. I needed to expose her true nature beyond any doubt. I needed Ethan to see the rot beneath the gold plating. "We'll talk later, son," I said gently. "Keep your head up. Don't let them see. They hurt you." I needed air. The ballroom was suffocating. I slipped out onto the massive stone balcony. The cool night air felt good against my hot face. I leaned against the railing. looking at the glittering skyline. They thought I was Thomas Hayes, a small-time contractor, struggling to make ends meet. They were wrong. My real name is T.J. Sterling. I didn't just work in construction. I owned Sterling Globe, the largest real estate development corporation on the East Coast. I built skyscrapers, entire neighborhoods. I was the ghost billionaire. I lived a simple life. I avoided the spotlight. I wanted Ethan to grow up normal, to understand the value of hard work. I didn't want him to become like them, entitled, arrogant, cruel. But maybe my secrecy had put him in danger. And for the last 6 months, Sterling Global had been busy, quietly, ruthlessly, buying up the outstanding debt and majority shares of Vanderbilt Corp. Vanderbilt Corp was failing. Richard was desperate for a savior, an investor to bail him out before the banks closed in. I was that savior, but I wasn't there to save him. I was there to bury him. I watched the city below. I owned most of the buildings I could see. But all that wealth meant nothing if my son was miserable. This charade wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting my son. And it was about to get very complicated. I walked back inside. The party had resumed its noisy chatter, but the atmosphere had changed. People were watching me, whispering. I noticed a young waitress near the pillar. Her name tag read Sarah. She was watching me with wide, frightened eyes. She quickly looked away when I caught her gaze. She looked nervous, like she knew something she shouldn't. I filed that away for later. Richard was near the bar, downing a glass of scotch. He saw me and started walking over, a greasy, forced smile plastered on his face. I felt desperate. "Thomas, may I call you Thomas?" he boomed, clapping me on the back too hard. The camaraderie was fake. My profound apologies for my daughter's behavior. She's young, impulsive. She meant no harm, just a silly joke. "Didn't she?" I asked mildly. No, of course not." He laughed nervously. Sweat was beading on his forehead. He lowered his voice. "You know, Thomas, you have a very striking presence. You remind me of a very powerful man I once crossed paths with. He was fishing, desperately. He wanted me to confirm his suspicion." "Is that so?" I said, playing dumb. "I'm just a simple man, Richard." I let him sweat. It was a pathetic display of cowardice. A man approached Richard, thin, nervous, wearing a suit that was expensive but rumpled. He was wringing his hands. "Richard, I need to speak with you. Urgently," the man whispered, his voice trembling. "It's about the Harrison loan. They pulled out. We have nothing left." Richard's face turned even paler. "Not now, Marcus. Not here. Marcus Cole, Vanderbilt Corp CFO. I knew who he was. I knew he had been cooking the books for years." He looked like a man drowning in guilt and fear. Marcus glanced at me, his eyes widening slightly. He recognized me too. He was smarter than Richard. "But Richard, the banks are calling. We need a solution tonight," Marcus insisted, his voice rising in panic. I said, "Not now," Richard hissed, pushing Marcus away. Marcus stumbled back, looking defeated. He retreated to the shadows, watching the party with the eyes of a condemned man. The cracks in Richard's facade were widening. The desperation was leaking out. Margaret joined us. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. She hadn't recognized me. She saw her husband fawning over a contractor. And she was furious. "Richard, stop monopolizing Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice icy. "I'm sure he's overwhelmed by all this." She turned to me, her smile venomous. "It must be quite a shock, coming from your background." "What background is that, Margaret?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. She faltered, surprised by the challenge. "Well, the working class. It's very different from our world. We have responsibilities. Expectations." "I see," I said. "And those expectations include insulting your guests, belittling people you perceive as beneath you." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do," I said evenly. "I do hope you're not stealing the silverware, Margaret. I hear it's very expensive." I threw her earlier, implied insult back at her. Richard gasped. Margaret looked furious. The blatant disrespect shocked her into silence. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. I knew then I couldn't just walk away. I had to end this. But first, I had to witness the depth of their depravity. I noticed an older woman watching us from across the room. Eleanor Vance, the dowager queen of the city's elite. She was elegant, formidable, and she didn't suffer fools. She was watching Margaret with a look of cold disdain. Eleanor knew things. She knew the secrets of every family in the city, and she clearly despised the Vanderbilts. She caught my eye and gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of respect. Or perhaps anticipation. Game recognizes game. Chloe reappeared, sulky, annoyed. She had been briefed by her father to be polite, but she couldn't hide her contempt. "Daddy, why are you still talking to him? You're ignoring Senator Davis." She glared at me. "He's ruining the atmosphere. Everyone feels awkward because he can't take a joke." The arrogance was staggering. She still thought she was in control. "Chloe, apologize to Mr. Hayes." "Now," Richard ordered. His voice was sharp, desperate. Chloe scoffed. "Apologize for what? Being honest? Don't be ridiculous, Daddy. He needs to learn his place." She turned and flounced away. Richard sighed dramatically. "Children, what can you do? You can teach them respect," I said, my voice hardening. "And you can start by modeling it yourself." Richard's smile faltered. He walked away, desperately trying to find a lifeline. But there was no one left to call. I looked for Ethan. I found him in the library, a quiet refuge. The room was filled with leather-bound books that had never been read. Ethan was staring into the empty fireplace. Shoulders slumped. He looked broken. I was about to go to him, to comfort him. But then I heard voices in the hallway. Richard and Chloe. I stepped back into the shadows, hidden behind a large tapestry. My heart pounded. This was it. The moment of truth. "He knows, Daddy. I can see it in his eyes. He's playing with us," Chloe whispered fiercely. Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with excitement. "Keep your voice down, you idiot," Richard hissed. "We don't know anything for sure, but if it is him, if it is Sterling, if it is, then Ethan is rich." "Filthy rich? We're saved, Daddy. All our financial problems are solved." Chloe sounded ecstatic. Greed overpowered everything else. My stomach turned. They were vultures, circling the prey. "If it is him, he hates us, Chloe." Richard's voice was tight with stress. "He heard what you called him. We are ruined if we don't control this situation. We need to fix this. Now." This was the moment. The final test. I had to hear it all. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. "We need to get Ethan on our side," Richard said. "Cold, calculating. If his father is Sterling, Ethan is the heir. He is our leverage. We need to make sure Ethan understands where his loyalties lie." "Ethan is weak," Chloe scoffed. "He's pathetic, and he adores that old man. He's still pouting about the joke." "Then we break that adoration," Richard said simply. His voice was devoid of emotion. "We make him choose. We make him see his father for the liability he is, or the liar he is. We secure the marriage. We secure the money." Tonight, they walked into the library. They hadn't seen me. I watched from the shadows. What followed was an act of cruelty so profound, it chilled me to the bone. "Ethan, darling," Chloe said. Her voice dripped with fake concern. She sat next to him, stroking his arm. Her touch was predatory. Ethan looked up. His eyes were red. "Chloe, what you said to my dad, it was unacceptable. I need you to apologize." "Oh, forget about that," she dismissed him. "That was a silly joke. We have much bigger things to discuss. Your father, it might not be who he says he is. They were poisoning him, turning him against me." Richard stood in front of Ethan, imposing, stern. "Ethan, there are two possibilities. Either your father is exactly who he seems, a low-class nobody who doesn't belong here, or he is someone very powerful, who has been lying to you your entire life." "Lying? My dad wouldn't lie to me," Ethan said, confused. "Wary, wouldn't he?" Chloe purred. If he's rich, why did he let you struggle? Why did he hide his true self? Because he's selfish, Ethan. He doesn't trust you. The manipulation was masterful. Vicious. They were twisting the truth, turning my desire to protect him into a betrayal. Richard leaned in, his face twisted with contempt. And if he's poor, then he's an embarrassment. A leech trying to cling to your success. Don't talk about my father like that. Ethan stood up. Anger flashed in his eyes. I felt a surge of pride. My son was fighting back. Sit down, Richard roared. Ethan flinched, sat back down. The intimidation was brutal. They were breaking him down. Listen to me, boy, Richard snarled. The mask was off now. The desperation was raw, ugly. Either way, he is a liability. He has no ambition, no drive. He's content living in the dirt. Chloe giggled. Cruel, sharp. He smells like sawdust and cheap beer. Ethan, it's disgusting. Do you want that smell clinging to you for the rest of your life? Ethan stared at them, horrified. Why are you doing this? I thought you loved me. They didn't even pause. They didn't even pause. They had no shame, no remorse. Because you need to make a choice, Chloe said, her beautiful face twisted into an ugly mask of greed. It's us or him. You want this life? The money, the status, the respect? Or do you want to end up like him, a fat, pathetic loser? Whether he's a poor loser or a rich liar, the words hit me like punches. Each one aimed at destroying the bond between me and my son. We are offering you everything, Ethan, Richard added. His tone was final. The ultimatum delivered, but we will not have that man dragging us down. You will cut ties with him. Tonight, publicly, you will tell him you choose us. Ethan was shaking. He looked so young, so broken. They were tearing him apart, all for the sake of their crumbling empire. My vision blurred with rage. A cold, calculating fury washed over me. I wanted to tear Richard Vanderbilt apart, but that would be messy. Emotional. I didn't do business with emotion. I did it with precision. I had to remain calm, for Ethan's sake. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about salvation. I backed away from the tapestry. My mind raced. They had shown their true colors. The test was over. It was time to end this. I walked back toward the ballroom, looking for Marcus Cole. I found him hiding in an alcove, nursing a drink. He looked terrified. Mr. Cole, I said quietly. He jumped, spilling his drink. Mr. Hayes? Mr. Sterling. I know about the books, Marcus, I said, my voice low. I know everything. The embezzlement, the fraud, the lies. Marcus trembled. He made me do it. Richard, he threatened me, my family. I have proof. I kept copies of everything. I'm not here to judge you, Marcus, I said. I'm here to offer you a way out. When the dust settles, I will need someone to help me dismantle Vanderbilt Corp. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried. I paused. Cooperate, and you'll be protected. Cross me, and you'll go down with them. Marcus looked at me, hope warring with fear. What do you need me to do? Nothing yet, I said. Just wait for my signal, and try to look natural. I walked away, leaving him trembling in the shadows. I had secured my inside man, the final piece of the puzzle. I went back to the balcony, the quiet sanctuary. I pulled out my phone. I dialed David Chin. My lawyer, my confidant, my weapon. TJ, is everything all right? You sound dangerous, David answered. Listen carefully, David, I said. My voice was low, steady. I want you to finalize the acquisition of Vanderbilt Corp. Immediately. TJ, the plan was to wait until the market opened tomorrow. We maximize the return if we wait. I don't care about the return, David. I want it done now. Execute the final transfer of shares. Freeze all assets. Liquidate everything. And I want the paperwork here. Tonight, the shift from passive observer to active destroyer. It felt good. David was silent for a moment. He knew me well enough not to argue. It will be messy, TJ. I want to burn it all down, David. I want to leave them with nothing but ashes. I paused. And David, bring the security team. The large team. I have a feeling the Vanderbilts won't take the news well. Understood. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up. The die was cast. The storm was coming. I walked back into the party. The orchestra was playing a waltz. People were dancing, laughing, oblivious to the financial earthquake that had just occurred. I saw Sarah, the waitress, near the kitchen entrance. She was arguing with Margaret Vanderbilt. "I need my payment tonight, Mrs. Vanderbilt," Sarah said, her voice trembling but firm. "You promised? The agency said you haven't paid them in months." "Don't be ridiculous, girl," Margaret hissed. "You'll get paid when we decide to pay you. Now get back to work before I have you blacklisted from this city." Margaret turned away, dismissing Sarah like a pesky fly. Sarah looked devastated. Tears welled in her eyes. I approached her quietly. "Trouble?" Sarah jumped. "It's nothing, sir. I really needed the money tonight. My mother is sick." "I understand," I said gently. I slipped a folded bill into her hand. $1,000. Her eyes widened in shock. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," I said. "And don't worry about Mrs. Vanderbilt. Her credit isn't good here anymore." I winked. A small smile touched Sarah's lips. I had made another ally. Richard was pacing near the entrance, checking his watch, his phone, his face slick with sweat. He was waiting for a miracle, a bailout, a miracle that would never come. He looked like a trapped animal, desperate, dangerous. I felt a grim satisfaction, watching him suffer. A chime signaled dinner. The guests migrated to the grand dining hall, a cavernous room, a massive mahogany table, white linen, silver cutlery, obscene wealth, stolen wealth. I found my seat near the end of the table, the place for the least important guests. Another deliberate snub. I smiled. It didn't matter. Ethan was seated between Chloe and Margaret. He looked numb, staring blankly at his plate. Pale, drawn, he was still processing the horrific conversation in the library. The impossible choice. Richard sat at the head of the table, a king surveying his court, but his hands were trembling. The first course was served. Expensive soup that tasted like lukewarm water. The irony was delicious. Richard stood up, tapped his glass with a knife. The ringing sound silenced the chatter. "Friends, family," he announced. His voice boomed, but unsteady. He was drunk. "Tonight we celebrate the union of two families. My beautiful daughter, Chloe, and our new son-in-law, Ethan." He smiled warmly at Ethan, a predatory smile. "Ethan, we are proud to welcome you into the Vanderbilt family." He raised his glass. "We believe in success. We believe in legacy." He paused, looked down the table toward me. His expression hardened. He chose attack, a fatal mistake. "In life, we must make choices," he continued. His voice dropped. Serious. "We must choose the path of success, and we must cut away the dead weight that holds us back, the anchors that drag us down to the depths of mediocrity." The insult was clear. The entire table understood. Ethan stared at his plate, his knuckles white. I waited. I wanted him to finish. I wanted him to hang himself with his own words. David wasn't here yet. The timing had to be perfect. The silence stretched. The tension built. "To the future," Richard declared. "To success. To the Vanderbilt legacy." The guests echoed the toast. To the legacy. It was time. I slowly stood up. The scraping sound of my chair silenced the room instantly. All eyes turned to me. "Excuse me, Richard," I said. My voice calm but carrying. Richard lowered his glass. Annoyed, terrified. "Mr. Hayes, we are in the middle of a toast. This is highly inappropriate." "Sit down." "I know," I said, walking slowly toward the center of the table. "But I believe there's something important that needs to be said. Something about legacy, and choices, and dead weight." Chloe rolled her eyes, loudly. "Oh God. Is the peasant going to give a speech? This should be hilarious." A few people laughed nervously. I stopped next to Ethan. I put a hand on his shoulder. He was trembling. "You spoke about choices, Richard," I said, looking directly at him. "About cutting away the dead weight. And you, Chloe. You called me a fat pig. The room went deathly silent. The tension was unbearable. "How dare you?" Margaret shrieked. Her voice pierced the silence. "How dare you speak to my husband like that in our own home? Richard, have him removed." "Sit down, Margaret," I said. My voice cut through her hysteria. The voice of authority. A man used to being obeyed. She flinched, sat down, her mouth opening and closing silently. That silence cut deeper than any word. I turned back to Richard. His face was purple. "You believe in success, Richard," I continued, "but your legacy is built on debt, on lies, and on cruelty. Your legacy is a house of cards, and the wind is blowing." I glanced at Marcus Cole, who was watching from the side of the room. He nodded almost imperceptibly. "This is outrageous," Richard roared, slammed his fist on the table. The cutlery rattled. "Security, get this man out of my house." The house security guards shifted nervously but didn't move. They sensed the shift in authority. "Your house?" I asked mildly. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Richard." Just then the doors opened. David Chen walked in, impeccably dressed, holding a thick leather folder. He was followed by 10 men in dark suits. My security team. They blocked the exits. David walked straight to me. "Mr. Sterling," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The transaction is complete." The name echoed in the silent room. Sterling, T.J. Sterling. The ghost billionaire. The blood drained from Richard's face. He stumbled back. Grasping the table, he looked like a man having a heart attack. "Sterling?" Chloe whispered. Disbelief, horror, greed. She looked at me. Then Ethan, her mind racing. I took the folder from David. "Richard Vanderbilt," I said. My voice rang with authority. "You have been looking for an investor, a savior." I opened the folder, pulled out a document. "I am that savior." I held up the document. "As of 30 minutes ago, Sterling Global has acquired the majority shares and all outstanding debt of Vanderbilt Corp. The acquisition is complete. Vanderbilt Corp is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Sterling Global." The room erupted. Guests gasped, whispering frantically, "It's a lie." Richard screamed. Desperate, "He's lying. It's a trick." "I don't lie, Richard," I said coldly. "Unlike you, I don't have to." I pulled out another document. "Furthermore, this house, this mansion, was leveraged against your company's debt. It now belongs to Sterling Global. Effective immediately." Margaret burst into tears. Loud, ugly sobs. "So, you see," I continued, "I am not a guest in your house, Richard. You are trespassing in mine." Richard collapsed into his chair. Broken, his empire crumbled to dust. Eleanor Vance raised her glass to me from across the room. A silent toast. The changing of the guard. Suddenly Richard lunged for the phone on the sideboard. "I'm calling the police. This is illegal. It's theft." David stepped forward. "I wouldn't do that, Mr. Vanderbilt. Unless you want me to inform them about the fraudulent activities we discovered during the acquisition. The cooked books, the embezzlement." David nodded toward Marcus Cole. "Mr. A. Cole has agreed to cooperate with the authorities. He has provided us with all the evidence." Richard froze, his face twisted in rage and defeat. He knew he was caught. The threat of prison hung heavy in the air. Chloe stared at me. Horror, greed, calculation. She turned to Ethan, grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with avarice. "Ethan, darling, your father? He's T.J. Sterling. We're rich, richer than ever. I always knew you were special." She tried to kiss him, a parody of affection. Ethan pulled away, staring at her as if he had never seen her before. The library, the insults, the mask had fallen. "You called him a pig," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling with rage, disgust. "You told me to cut him off. You called him a pathetic loser. You said he smelled like sawdust and cheap beer." "No, I didn't mean it. It was a joke. I was testing you," Chloe pleaded. "Pathetic. Ethan, please." "I love you, love," Ethan said, his voice rising. Newfound strength. "You don't know the meaning of the word. You love money. You love yourself." He ripped the engagement ring off his finger, threw it on the table. "We're done, Chloe. Get out of my father's house." Chloe screamed. Denial. Rage. She lunged at Ethan. My security team stepped in. Restrained her. Get them out of here, I ordered, pointing at Richard and Margaret. Richard looked up at me. Hatred. Despair. You ruined me. You destroyed everything I built. No, Richard, I said. Calm. Steady. Your greed ruined you. Your arrogance ruined you. Your cruelty ruined you. I just handed you the bill. The security team escorted the Vanderbilts out. Chloe was still screaming obscenities until the doors closed behind them. The remaining guests watched in stunned silence. I turned to them. The party is over. You may leave. They scrambled out, eager to escape the carnage. Eleanor Vance approached me as the others left. Her eyes sparkled with amusement. Well played, Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice dry. I haven't seen a takedown that brutal since the 80s. She smiled thinly. If you need any assistance navigating the social fallout, do give me a call. It's going to be delicious. She walked away, leaving behind a hint of lavender and old secrets. Soon, the dining hall was empty, except for me, Ethan, David, and Marcus Cole, who was nervously waiting by the door. Sarah, the waitress, was quietly starting to clear the plates. I turned to David. David, make sure Sarah and the rest of the staff are paid what they are owed. Double it, and offer them positions within Sterling Global if they want them. David nodded. Already handled, TJ. Sarah looked up, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by the remnants of the feast. Lost, overwhelmed. I walked over to him. He looked up at me. Questions, pain, regret. Dad, why did you lie? Why did you pretend to be poor? Why didn't you tell me who you really were? Because I needed to know, Ethan, I said gently. I needed to know if she loved you for who you are, or if she loved the idea of money. I needed to see who they really were when they thought no one important was watching. Most importantly, I needed you to see it too. I paused, and I didn't share my wealth with you earlier because I wanted you to understand the value of hard work. I didn't want you to become like them, entitled, arrogant, cruel. Money without character is a curse. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. They were so cruel, Dad. What they said about you, what they tried to make me do, I almost listened to them. I almost chose them. The confession hung in the air, raw, honest. It doesn't matter what they said, Ethan, I said. I pulled him into a hug, held him tight. What matters is that you saw the truth before it was too late. You made the right choice when it mattered most. Ethan clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, the cheap tuxedo jacket absorbing his tears. I thought I loved her. I was so blind. I know, son, but that wasn't love. That was a transaction, a business deal, and you deserve better. I held him for a long time, letting him process the shock, the betrayal. Finally, he pulled away. He looked around the opulent dining hall, a monument to greed. So all this, it's yours now. It's ours, I corrected him. But it's just stuff, Ethan. It's empty. I turned to Marcus Cole. Marcus, you know what to do. Tomorrow morning, we begin the liquidation, and cooperate fully with the authorities regarding Richard's activities. Marcus nodded eagerly. Yes, Mr. Sterling, thank you. I led Ethan out of the dining hall, through the grand foyer, out the front door. David followed silently. We stood on the steps of the mansion, looking at the city lights. The air was clean, crisp. What now, Dad? Ethan asked, his voice quiet but steady. Now, I said, we go home. We build a real legacy, not based on money, but on respect, integrity, and family. The values you never truly forgot. I looked at the mansion one last time. David? Yes, TJ? Have the bulldozers here tomorrow. I want this place leveled. We'll build a park in its place. Something beautiful. Something real. We walked down the driveway, leaving the Vanderbilt legacy behind us, crumbling to dust. Wealth isn't about money. It's not about houses or cars. It's about the richness of your relationships, the strength of your character. I had almost lost my son to the illusion of wealth. But tonight, we reclaimed something far more valuable. We reclaimed each other. And as we walked away, I knew we were the richest men in the world. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comment. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.